like it's in what I think is going to be an economic downturn, that we see ourselves entering into the years of lead. Now, years of lead was a term that was used by the Italians to describe the period of time between like 69 to 89 in Italy, where things weren't very good. There was lots of left and right wing terrorism and something of a kind of social war going on, something that I think can be described as fifth generational warfare. Now, I wanted to preface this by invoking the Fallout term, war never changes. It does, actually, and I've always kind of hated that line, because what they're trying to do is speak to a fundamental essence of suffering, right, that underpins war. War is a difficult and arduous thing that just brings destruction and suffering, and therefore, in that respect, war never changes. But in every other respect, war absolutely does change. It changes quite a lot, depending on who's fighting, what they're fighting for, and the time period they're fighting in. And the concept of fifth generational warfare is one that I find very interesting, because I think at this point we can agree that basically each faction hates, fears, and mistrusts the other. They don't understand one another, and they've got no particular interest in actually coming down and trying to resolve any of the differences they appear to have. And so I think that what we're heading into is this fifth generational warfare. Now, this was introduced by academics in 2008 and 2018, where it seems to have gained prominence. But the argument is that fifth generational warfare is group versus group conflict in a competition for cultural dominance and value-based legitimacy and authority, which exists within the state but is not necessarily waged against the state. And they also
kind of BS. Like that's an academic who's gotten the term psyops and academic it up, in my opinion.
No. I think they're right.
It's a correct description of a thing that happens, but I think they've over academicked it.
Yeah. It's obviously social groups that are vying for dominance within the current existing paradigm, right?
But they're waging psychological warfare against each other.
Yes. In fact, that's what they say. Fifth generation warfare is unique that it need not be kinetic, which means physical war, but fought in informational domains. In the current context, fifth generational warfare might be seen to be conducted more or less in the domain of non-professional fighters. This generation of warfare is engendered by the narrative of social movements which may be expressed in mob or pack circumstances. It may be considered identity-based war in an attempt to dominate the opposing culture or other culture. And we see this all the time. I'm going to give a few examples. I mean, I could have picked dozens, thousands of examples. I mean, pretty much all of my internet career has been tracking fifth generational warfare. So it's
the term culture war.
Exactly, is exactly what they're describing. But this one I found particularly entertaining, right? And so I've never seen a TV program called The Rookie before. But if we can get to the next one, John, the star of this, or one of the stars of this, is a chap called Titus Macon, who's debating going back to season 3, blah 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 blah, right? But the point is, he plays a black police officer. Now, I imagine that when he started playing this role, this wasn't quite as controversial as it is now. But he says that he found himself doing some soul searching after the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. He says, a lot of people are finding a voice, and I found that for myself. I was like, oh wow, I've been complacent. I woke up one morning and I was watching the news and I was like, I can't do this. I can't go and play a cop on a show and not talk about the fact that I'm a black cop. My character hadn't addressed any of that. It was a bit of a bigger situation than I was able to fully describe at the time, because it starts back for me, even just playing a cop in the first place, which was a hurdle with where I'm from and how I viewed cops growing up, to play one. I was already wrestling with, oh man, people are going to think I'm team cops. So, okay. I mean, like if we're talking about fifth generation warfare, it's like one group against another. So one group is anti-cop, right? And explicitly so, right? So it's like, okay, but let's assume, this is how we know that fifth generational warfare is going on, right? Because who would care if he was team cops, right? Who cares? What difference does it make? You go about your daily life, what difference does it make? Well, it only matters if something happens because you're on team cops, right? And that's the problem, the politicization of society, again, not involving the state. It's involving ideological groups of actors who view each other as mortal adversaries.
It's good for him to also point out that this is new, that he's never had to do this before, this soul searching. There is a new thing that's being done to him.
Exactly. All of this stuff is new, it's being introduced in society, and it shows a demonstrable lack of tolerance. I mean, like,
How could a black man be a police officer? The same way a black man can be a firefighter. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
exactly. Why are you even bringing that up? The same way the white person does it. They join the police force, get trained, get a uniform, do the job, get paid, retire, hopefully, unless you're, what was it, David Dawn.
Yes.
So, so it's just like, Black Lives Matter come knocking. So, but anyway, I mean, like, isn't everyone team cops when a murderer's on the loose?
No.
No, apparently not.
But you remember the Antifa murderer? Vice were on Team Murderer.
Good point. That's a good example. Very good example. And so the point of this kind of ideological warfare is done through narratives and social stigma and incitement. And so I think the best example of this is the fact that the word Nazi is no longer strong enough. Nazi now doesn't have the impact that it had, and Loretta Ross, a woman and gender studies professor from Massachusetts, had wrote that I can't remember what it was now, Counterpunch or something, she'd written this, wrote that the World War II Nazis, post-World War II Nazis, faced Nuremberg trials in order to send a warning to the world, and those who managed to escape justice essentially became non-entities. The term Nazi is not even strong enough to convey the opprobrium and disgust human rights activists feel for those who brazenly claim they are simply patriots with different opinions. Like, imagine, I'm a patriot with different opinions. God, I hate you more than anything. You're worse than a Nazi. Like these people aren't saying we need to genocide anyone. From the White House to the Congress to the streets, they declared war on democracy. They are seditionists, co-conspirators, and neo-Nazis hiding in plain sight who choose to use whatever power platforms and microphones they have to overturn this system of government. Their apparent goal is an apartheid-like system in which an embattled minority of people rule over millions of those who oppose them. What are you talking about? A, that seems to be what Joe Biden's going for. But B, why is this in your mind? Like, and then you commit this to digital paper and put it out on the internet for everyone to read. And it's like, okay, so what more do you want to do to stigmatize?
She's not saying the white nationalists in Atomwaffen, for example, want an apartheid state.
No.
She's saying patriots with different opinions.
MAGA
So
supporters.
MAGA. It's code for MAGA.
Yeah.
So she's saying the MAGA people want an apartheid state where blacks are. Well, why didn't they do it for the last 4 years? What were they doing? They're too busy.
Why are they part of the Republican Party, not the Democrat Party, if they want apartheid? I mean, just, sorry. Why?
That's the reason they weren't able to do it. They're in the wrong party.
Yeah, exactly.
Need to flip. These versions of MAGA supporters she believes exist are just...
Yeah.
They're outnumbered.
But again, notice how, I mean, you couldn't get a more strident social attack on another group of people, right? You couldn't get less charity. You couldn't get less interest in dealing with them as, like, your fellow Americans. This is, my fellow enemies, the armed camp over there who are, the armed barbarians who are within the walls and who we actually turned out to live with for our entire lives. These statements and the attitude they have towards them is as negative as can be. I mean, again, Nazi isn't strong. It's like when David Lammy called Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's Nazi isn't strong enough. It's like, well, we don't have a worse word.
Pedophile?
Yeah, but that's not political. Well, it wasn't political until the left politicized everything. But like, Nazi is a political term to describe people with political opinions that are evil, right? They're just genocidal, imperialistic, totalitarian, tyrannical, and don't get me wrong, I agree.
Socialist.
All of I hate socialists too. Like, I totally agree. Socialism bad, right? You got me. But like, when that's not bad enough, I mean, what do you have next? I guess you've got Trump supporter, right? But anyway, so let's continue our...
It's a real open window into her life. Like, American individualism is worse than genocidal socialism. Okay.
Why is it that the foreigners don't agree? Like, if the rates of immigration are anything to go by, it seems to be highly desirable, and the socialist genocides seem to be the things they're fleeing, which explains Donald Trump's, veneration in the Cuban community.
Yeah, well, the Cubans got tack-feared into the white race. So.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Cubans, worse than Nazis. But anyway, we'll carry on with our fifth generational warfare, because again, we can see this everywhere, and it's all of these cultural attacks designed to destroy the legitimacy of the opponent's position, again without firing a shot. Rachel Levine, the new Secretary of Health, the clearly sane person.
She's an assistant to Biden or assistant to the health department or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. But she's clearly going to be very influential in this part, has said that Republican lawmaker who shared a meme has placed thousands of LGBT plus people at risk. To date, no memes have ever killed anyone, but that's not really what she's talking about.
Could always be the first.
She could always be the first. But what she's talking about is something that they have termed stochastic terrorism, which otherwise known as sort of lone wolf terrorism. But stochastic terrorism is a concept that puts it into a sort of tapestry of a larger social movement, right? So the term, as Wikipedia tell us, is used to suggest that there is a quantifiable relationship that may exist between seemingly random acts of terror and their intended goal of perpetuating a reign of fear via a manipulation of mass media and its capacity for instant global news communication, which makes it sound like the left has been committing stochastic terror against every person they've deplatformed.
Yes.
So...
True statement.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's if
like
this,
there's a reason we call them social terrorists.
Yeah,
because they are.
Exactly. But again, this is a part of fifth generational warfare. This is one of the methods by which fifth generational warfare can take place.
I agree. I'm really hating all these extra terms. Like,
yeah, me too.
In the meme world, these terms are culture war, fifth generational warfare. What is that? Stochastic terrorism, just social terrorists or lone wolf terrorists. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There are meme terms that apply to all of these
just
things.
Just hate academics.
Yeah, they have to, try and intellectualize things. But I mean, these are not untrue things that they're saying.
No, it's good that they've catched up with the meme lords.
Yeah, it is. It is. But the point is, by their own terms now, well, you guys are a bunch of terrorists waging a war. And I mean, this came about because of this tweet from, what was his name? Sorry. Brian Levine, is it? Brian Sims, sorry. Oh, no, it was Jeff Pyle. Right, so Jeff Pyle, if we can scroll down just a little bit so we can see his tweet. American citizens express optimism and renewed hope as Benjamin Franklin joins Joe Biden's cabinet. I mean, that's genuinely funny.
That's a good joke.
Yeah. Like, if that's terrorism, then, I mean, we're all in trouble. But so the reply, though, was from Brian Sims. Pennsylvanian, I can't remember what he does, but he's someone important. But
co-chair of the LGBTQ Equality Caucus.
Oh yeah, that was it. Right,
very important position.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got another one that's more important.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. But he has conferred with his colleagues, member of the caucus and the Democratic leadership, and all are in agreement that this is discriminatory and dangerous behaviour by Pyle. By attacking Secretary Levine in this way, Pyle has perpetuated both transphobia and discrimination against the LGBT plus community, which have among the highest rates of civil rights violation and discrimination in the nation, often with deadly consequences. Pyle has brought the House of Representatives into dishonour and disrepute, good sir. Until these actions are addressed, he continues to place her and hundreds of thousands of LGBTQ plus people in the Commonwealth at further risk to discrimination to discrimination to attack. This lunacy is built on the idea of stochastic terrorism. I mean, I doubt that there are tens of thousands of LGBTQ plus people in Pennsylvania, to be honest with you. I think the numbers are being inflated, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is
LGBTQ plus.
Yeah,
can include literally everyone.
Yeah, so. Literally everyone. But the point is, this lunacy is built on the idea of stochastic terrorism because merely mocking the group is apparently a form of fifth generational warfare in their view.
But if she was a Republican, that trans woman there, this would not be a form of terrorism. These people would not bring it up.
No, but that's because it's part of fifth generational warfare. It's their team versus our team, and their team bad, our team good. It's okay when we do it, it's bad when you do it.
But they view her as part of a collective, whereas
absolutely, yeah.
In the Republican side, they would view her as a person.
Yeah, just an individual political actor. If you're a politician, you're up for being mean.
But she's part of the collective of LGBTQ plus and whatever the hell else that means.
Yeah, she's part of the team, and so and it's in this context that I think it's worth talking about the anti-LGBT church in California that was bombed recently. This seems to be again
anti-LGBT.
Yes, anti-LGBT. So now I don't know much about this church, but Josh was looking into this, and he's going to have an article about this on lotus.com hopefully later today, because apparently the church itself is pretty extreme. So I'm not saying I'm not going to be defending the views of this church. Apparently they've said things like gay people should be killed, and sort of essentially the same sort of position as ISIS when it comes to theologically.
Westboro Baptist Church.
Westboro Baptist Church sort of stuff, right? Really, really extreme. They're called the First Works Baptist Church, and again, before this, I'd never heard of them. But this is what I mean by the sort of years of lead. So now it's going to be left. I mean, this is bound to be left-wing terrorism. We don't know who did it yet, but given who the target was, I'm guessing it wasn't.
I don't think Richard Spencer's bombing the anti-LGBT church.
Right, exactly. But if you're an anti-LGBT church in California,
you're getting bombed by Antifa.
Exactly. Right. So that's probably who it is. But they've been the recent target of protests and like graffiti, and this seems to be part of a pattern of escalation that has now resulted in them being bombed, IRA style. And yeah, so this is what I mean by the sort of years of lead, and it's part of this idea of fifth generation warfare, and it seems that the Southern Poverty Law Center may have been responsible for stochastic terrorism against them, in which the Southern Poverty Law Center had previously essentially put a marker on them, put a target on them, by doing their reports classifying the church as a hate group that promote anti-LGBT plus sentiments, and therefore this makes them the target of protests, death threats, petitions from a group called Keep El Monte Friendly. That's what they call themselves.
Bombs in the name of tolerance.
Yes, this is a friendship bomb. You weren't being tolerant enough. And this is really what's happening. I mean, I'm making it up. If I made it up, it'd sound ridiculous.
I mean, it does. It sounds like a sketch.
Yeah, it does, right? The Keep El Monte Friendly group, of course, have disavowed bombing things. They've said... For now, yeah. They've said our movement was intended to bring light and awareness to the hateful rhetoric taught by this group. We understand that what they preach can make people upset. However, we would never promote, encourage, or condone acts of violence or harm.
Well, hang on. You said that they did send death threats.
Not them themselves. Death threats were sent to the
I thought they were
First
basically
Baptist
saying,
Church.
we disavow bombs, but death threats are all right. Send them. Just don't carry them out.
Yeah, no, we don't know the death threats came from them, nor do we know that the graffiti came from them, but they were protesting, and I mean...
I agree with their right to protest, obviously.
Sure, of course they've got a right to protest.
But bombing, death threats, and destroying property...
But all of this follows from the Southern Poverty Law Center's sort of designation of them.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they don't bring this on themselves by saying, hey, maybe gay people should be killed, which is obviously something we don't agree with. But the point is, this is the fifth generation warfare, and this appears to be an example of stochastic terrorism, where it's this general environment where this particular group has been persecuted, they've been actively demonized by wider society, and then individuals from within society itself, presumably, have taken it upon themselves to take action in the form of terrorism against this group. Unacceptable either way that it's done.
But you'll notice the fact that it was made by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Southern Poverty Law Center are not credible people. They label all sorts of groups, hate groups that just aren't. Yeah. They just make it up.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If we're going to define anything as a hate group, then sure, this church probably does come into that category. So do the Keep El Monte Friendly group come into that category as well. So,
but the point here I was trying to make was, if they're able to do this against, let's just I don't even know what the correct term is for such people. Homophobic. Let's just use that. That's probably correct. Yeah. If they're able to say this homophobic group is a hate group and therefore people will go out and do these things, well, why can they not do it to MAGA? At what point? Why can't they do it to Lindsey Graham? Lindsey Graham is opposed to abortion.
Well, they've done it to Tucker Carlson.
Exactly.
Turned up at his house.
And where does that line actually drop? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't. Which is why I've seen some people try and set up groups for the same thing on the left, and I'm also not really in favor of it. Yeah. Because where's the line? Where do you do it?
Anyway, so carrying on very quickly to wrap up, Parler was, of course, the victim of this kind of fifth generational warfare. This was an interview that Amy Peikoff, the what position does she hold again?
I think she's public relations or something like that.
Something like that. I think it was something else. But yeah, she's been doing the public relations for Parler. And she went on Tucker Carlson's show and explained that, look, it wasn't just that Amazon who deplatformed us, because that actually wouldn't be a problem. They're not the only game in town. The problem is that every other game in town were like, oh, geez, if Amazon's done that, we're not going to touch you. And not just front-end things either. It was all sort of back-end services that normal people would use for normal things.
If we continue to do business with you, Amazon might cut us off.
Exactly.
So we're going to have to conform.
Exactly. So the Eye of Sauron was turned on Parler, and everything around just fled and retreated. And this being the sort of highest form of fifth-generational warfare, when you can literally destroy your opponents by just looking at them, then you've got this terrifyingly powerful ability. And it's no surprise there are left-wingers who are like, I can't believe I've just been deplatformed. I can't believe I've just been cancelled. Yeah, well, welcome to the club. That's what happens. Hopefully Parler is
now you're a Trump voter.
Yeah. Welcome to the X for Trump group. You know, whatever you're...
Antifa for Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, like practically, sort of like Ghazi Kodzo, Black Hitler, Black nationalist types. A bunch of them, I really think, are very close to being Trump supporters at this point. Like Tariq Nasheed, Ghazi Kodzo, all those sort of things. They hate Antifa. They're like, they're white racists. And it's like, black supremacists for Trump. It's only a matter of time.
Oh,
but anyway, like I said, Parler's working on returning, but of course this has been difficult. This kind of cancellation previously happened to Gab, so none of the infrastructure is safe. So if you are conservatives, try and make sure you work from the ground up. Make sure it's things they can't just deny service for, and you should be fine. That seems to be the only option at this point if we're into this open social war between two factions who have no mercy. I mean, I say the two factions have no mercy. I don't know what MAGA people have cancelled Democrats or left-leaning things. I'm not actually familiar with any examples.
I mean, that New York Times editor, maybe. But
Was that MAGA doing it?
I mean, people were upset that she was being partisan. I think the New York Times did it because they also were trying to cover their ass.
Sure, but it wasn't MAGA saying, fire that woman, was it?
No. I mean, sure, some MAGA people were upset, but I can't think of...
Well, being a hypocrite, yeah.
What's an example? Because that's not even the same to the extent that the leftists will do it.
We're not going to say that MAGA was influencing the New York Times to fire one of their journos, right?
Not the...
Because that's certainly not going to be...
But also they wouldn't give a shit. Like,
yeah, exactly. The New York
MAGA
Times
are upset. They don't read our paper. Who cares?
We hate MAGA. We're trying to currently frame them as a terrorist group. We're not taking orders from them. That's...
But take, the man who shall not be named, TR.
Yeah.
Like, is there anyone on the left who's been treated like that?
No. And incidentally, talking about Voldemort, sorry, the next one, please, John. He posted this recently to Gab, and I posted it as well. That Voldemort was just deplatformed by his bank, which was HSBC, and they've just said, "Sorry, we're not going to do business with you anymore. We're closing your account. You got 65 days, take your money out, and get stuffed." It's like, right, okay, that's terrifying. So now we have the full-on ethical agenda, the sort of essentially the sort of fascistization of social society and economic life being taken over. So everything now has an ethical agenda, which is why the Conservatives are going to have to figure out something on their end. Otherwise, the left is just going to ruin them.